Marius, take it away.
Okay, so welcome to today's QA Tools Team workshop. Today's topic is our handling of recent NPM security incidents, which you can see here also in the list of workshop topics, where you can also see upcoming topics. So let's start right away. So that's the epic we created for those incidents, or rather our particular tasks we took for handling them. And it's not really a lot actually, but it was, especially in the beginning, a lot of catching on, which isn't really reflected here. But I'll also not go one by one through these because probably it would be a little bit too boring. It's just in case you want to know some of the details. So I also linked it here in Etherpad, which you have a link in the Jitsi session too. So all the links I will mention, at least all important ones, are here in Etherpad. And if you like, you can also add some links to background info if you have some interesting links about the topic. I'm always interested. But of course, this talk is more focusing on what we did in our team, and of course, not so much about general information, which you probably all have heard of. So I'm also going right in with what we actually did. So, yeah, first of all, whenever a new attack came up, we did manual checks of the Git history and installed files just to see whether we are affected or not. And as mentioned, this actually meant a lot of catching up because these attacks were multiple different smaller ones actually, and they also had a different impact and were also of different types. For instance, some were using install scripts and were actually attacking us as developers. Others were actually injecting code onto the HTML page, which would be served to users. And therefore, it was definitely always something to read about, and of course, then to see what packages are actually affected, although these lists were often not complete. Um, but because it was so much catching up, I at some point decided to automate this at least a little bit based on known vulnerable packages. And I'm just showing you this because it shows how long the list has grown over time, even though it's probably not complete. But I at least compactified it a little bit with these or this way of specifying various versions. Um, so it was eventually quite a long list, so definitely nothing you wanted to check by hand anymore. And yeah, those are scripts I used. It's partially based on what some articles mentioned, so I only tweaked it a little
Marius,
bit
could you
for our.
please zoom in for all the GitHub pages to at least 100%, 120%? If you zoom in here, the other pages. Yeah,
I
this is good.
Yeah, I can do it, but of course, don't try to read any of these package names. They are fixed in production, so you don't have to worry about them anymore. And also, it's too much. I just wanted to show you how much. Um, and I also had a second script which did it a little bit differently because you can't be too careful. I also did sometimes just via some grabbing or find command investigation because you don't know whether these package lists are complete So I checked for suspicious contents within the repository based on certain articles on how these exploits actually work. Yeah, so that was this. And we also had Depender-bot alerts. Here, just one example of one we have fixed now. But I must say these alerts weren't really firing. I'm just saying we had them, but they were not firing for us for these incidents. Yeah, and now, of course, the question comes, did we find anything? And for OpenQA, I can say OpenQA was never affected at all. We used some of the problematic packages, but we were never on one of the affected versions. So that's good. For QEMBot, I have to say we were actually for a short time on an affected version of one package, but luckily nobody seemed to have installed it. I asked on Slack. I also provided a comment how you can see this via some Git commands. Yeah, and in production, we have never deployed this version because we only deploy commits which are signed by a SUSE employee. So um, we would never deploy a commit which is just created by Mergify, which is our tool to merge pull requests, which, for instance, Depender-bot would create for an update of an NPM package. Yeah, but we would never deploy it. So we were safe here. And that's all about our projects, actually. We only have two which use NPM packages, OpenQA and QEM dashboard. But unfortunately, two projects are enough to have to worry about this topic. Or now that I say it, we actually also have Grafana deployed somewhere, but I guess it uses a different package manager, which of course doesn't mean it's safe, but I guess I'll go into this later.
Yeah, there's a hand raised from Seb.
Okay.
So Seb, you want to speak up?
Quick question, actually, can I reuse your script somehow in an easy way?
Kind of. It's definitely not specific to anything. It's just here in this public repository, Marchus OpenQA helper, and it's also, if you want to have the link, mentioned here in Etherpad. Um, and it doesn't have any dependencies. It just sources a file within this repository you would clone anyway, and it will use NPM. At least one version, I guess, uses NPM, so you have to have it installed. Right, I guess this version checks the current NPM cache for a certain installation, and the other one uses the NPM command itself to list packages based on package log dot sorry, based on the dot file for logged packages, and also based on what's currently installed.
Yeah,
And
it's
Okay,
not
thanks a
it's not
lot.
very
something
generic.
that we use in automation. As Marius mentioned, we have an automation in place which provides us updates and review and deployment, and we don't use it stat. So Marius used it only for keeping track for that specific supply chain attack on the
Yes,
NPM ecosystem.
because to be useful in the future, you of course wanted to extend this list of packages and maybe also throw out old ones. Um, yeah, because otherwise it will of course not know what's wrong. It really is specific to certain attacks.
Sure thing. I'm asking mostly about, how to get it into the pipeline, so to say. So I would have like a summary kind of a security check done automatically, and of course the list has to be maintained. Of course, yes, that's obvious. I will play with it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so where was I? Right. So what we have done. So now basically the next section is what long-term improvements did we do? And it's unfortunately not a lot, but there's also only so much you can do. But one of the improvements is that we have actually fixed this depender bot alert, which I've shown you before. Also, this actually had nothing to do with these incidents. We were just basically cleaning up here. And this was also not a very problematic um, security vulnerability. I must say we are still unfortunately on an old unmaintained or let's say unsupported version of Vue. That's the UI framework used on QEM dashboard. So that might be a bit of a problem in the future.
Are you sure?
Here,
We are actually using version 3.
we're using, oh, I thought we are using version 2 because we had a ticket
I know.
with,
It turned out that it's only the Vue template compiler.
very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought, okay, we had this ticket, but then eventually we just
Right.
updated this one package, so we haven't actually updated Vue. But nice, okay, then we are on a even updated version of it.
Yep. So hackers go away. There's nothing to see here.
Yeah, that's cool. Good. So that was what we did about QAM dashboard in particular. Then I think all the other points are about OpenQA and QAM dashboard both. So one thing we did was to add ignore scripts to the npm install command, which cannot be configured somehow globally via some config file, but at least whenever we explicitly use npm install in the make file, for instance, but also when packaging and in the CI, we add dash dash ignore scripts, which will make it ignore install scripts, which it turns out we don't actually need. And this way we are basically preventing one class of attacks. For instance, one attack which was actually also present during this spike of incidents was actually using an install script in order to read credentials from a developer's machine. And with this in place, this wouldn't have had any effects. Yeah, another thing was to reduce the number of NPM dependencies. Oh, and I'm afraid actually this was only really successful for OpenQA itself, not so much for for QEM bot, which has a lot of dependencies actually because of its use of Vue and a bit more modern web technologies. OpenQA itself is a bit more safe here because we don't use NPM a lot anyway, and usually just use it to pull in, let's say, Bootstrap and not things which use this dependency manager a lot to pull in various other dependencies. But we could reduce it a little bit, and we also made it so if you, as a developer, type in make test to execute tests, and of course, also if this is executed in the CI or if it's executed when building packages, we don't install all NPM packages anymore, but only what's actually required for runtime, which means we don't need all the dependencies for style checks and tidying, which are actually a huge amount of packages. So that's actually quite an improvement.
Yeah, that was one of the more severely affected chain of packages for, linter tidying and all that.
Yes. Unfortunately, if you as developer type make tidy to tidy up JavaScript or Perl, you will actually install all of these because then there's of course no help and we need them. Yeah, but at least in some cases we reduce the number. And I think I also got rid of some dependency which wasn't actually used anymore. Yeah, and last but not least, we did one further improvement, which is not to approve NPM updates anymore as human reviewers. We had this habit of approving Dependabot pull requests, just like we approved any other PRs. But of course, with Dependabot PRs, we actually couldn't really do a good review anyway, because for this, we would actually really have to check this new version and what it contains. And that, of course, leads a bit too far for a review. So now we said, let's not do these reviews anyway. We probably can't provide any insightful approvals anyway. And this means that these PRs will now be kept open for a while, but at some point, our automation to merge these anyway automatically kicks in. So it's not like we will stay on old versions forever, which might also be problematic because maybe new versions actually fix security issues. So we will actually eventually update, but it's a bit delayed. It's actually 4 days delayed.
Yeah, there
If
is the exception, of course, and we had that some days ago with another Dependabot security alert where the Dependabot opened an update, and I checked and saw that the new version, which the update was including, is actually fixing a security issue, and then I approved that also a bit sooner because then I was sure I can trust that new version.
Yeah, also we probably should be careful because if
Yes.
I would be a malicious actor and would be able to control a repository to be able to make a new release, I would probably frame it as solving some security issue.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's what wasn't just in the name that, fixes issue something, but, referenced on a third party.
Yeah. So here's just our mergify.yaml. You don't need to read this in detail. I just want to show you the tool we actually use here is Mergify. And here, for instance, are these 4 days configured for the delay, which is basically just moving around some labels. Um, yeah, so I guess that's it for our improvements. So maybe to sum it up, we were not really affected anyway. And therefore, also we didn't have to improve so much. And especially for OpenQA, we have a little bit the benefit that we rely on older libraries where NPM is basically just provides us with a different way of downloading some files, but we are not really using the dependency management to pull in tons of transitive dependencies. So we don't have so much of them. So yeah, I guess that's good on our side. Also, maybe not ideal too. So maybe let's move on to the next section, which would be background info. So here I can share one interesting podcast or actually also YouTube video if you like, which was giving quite a few insights. So if you want to know more about the topic and the different ways how these attacks worked and who was behind it, or rather which different people, you can watch this. Um, yeah, otherwise, feel free to share also some interesting links. And what I like to add is that this wasn't actually just about NPM, especially during this time, also other incidents came up more often. So I think also Visual Studio was, or at least their marketplace was having some malicious packages. And I think also the AUR, Arch Linux User Repository, was having some malicious packages. So I don't think this really only applies to NPM. And even just within the NPM attacks, it's kind of a conclusion that probably one attack ignited others because people thought, okay, maybe that's something you can actually do. And then, yeah, more attacks came, and also other package managers or forms of distributions were attacked. Um, yeah, so you really have to be careful. So I guess I'm more than careful than ever when I install packages from the RUR now, and also Visual Studio plugins, basically anything.
Yeah, I
And
think
I
this
guess
acts
we
as a good reminder that, all those slow-paced conservative distribution models have some merit. Of course, they have,
Mhm.
for us developers, all those drawbacks about being slow and such, but still, I mean, they have good use cases which are realistic
A
and
little bit,
yeah.
yes. I guess we actually also rely heavily on Perl modules for OpenQA. And interestingly, here nothing came up. I guess here one important aspect is just missing at this point, which is popularity. Everything which I saw which came up was actually also some popular package manager, and within this also only popular packages were affected. So yeah, okay, I guess people don't use Perl so much anymore today. Okay, and I see you shared another link. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
guess
this is
that's
a related improvement for QM Dashboard because in QM Dashboard, basically we use the same approach for Dependabot, but additionally we have the additional restriction that we only allow a fully linear history. That's the same for QMBot and QM Dashboard. One of the main reasons is that unlike OS Audience and OpenKA, we deploy those two from Git repository, as you described, from signed, verified, and trusted commits only. But that means it's much easier to ensure we have a trusted history by enforcing a linear history. But that also means that Depender bot updates, which there are often multiple ones in parallel, would only be able, basically the automation was only able to handle a single pull request, and then all others were stale because they couldn't be merged automatically. And I found a way with Mergify and a third bot account, which is the SUSE QE Tools Mergify account. So a bot account that we own, that we created to rebase waited pull requests. So after the waiting period, when Depender bot has created a pull request and we have waited the cool off time, then these pull requests are either automatically merged if all checks pass, or they are rebased and then tried again. And Mergify is additionally also using a merge queue here. So, it tries to make sure that all those things are really tested against the current state in master before merging. And you can see the effect here. There are multiple waiting, so all of them are waiting. Some where tests pass, some where tests don't pass. So that's fine. And then you see some waited further below in the list, which are problematic. So one is yeah, you see those which say dequeued, so they had been removed from the queue. And could you please show the merged pull requests?
Yeah, those should have hopefully have successful waited ones.
Yeah,
Yeah, here for
exactly.
instance.
So yeah, exactly. That one was closed. The types node one below. I think that's a better example. So yeah, but you can see that it says waited, and I think this one was merged out. No, wait, I actually merged that myself after the waiting time.
Right, because normally you shouldn't have waited in the end because that is removed by Mergify as we see here. Unless it's
Yeah,
maybe merged
most
manually.
of the pull requests are really just handled automatically.
But it seems to work, so only after 5 days it was merged.
Yeah, but no, I merged that.
Alright. Okay, I just thought deleted, but yeah, right. Deleted was you, but also merged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, that automation helps so that the usual approach is that uh, it just works automatically, and we can still review that if we want to. We don't have to rush things, and still then there's the additional safety net regarding whatever happens there. Doesn't mean that we just blindly trust it because there's another security level in place after having those merged.
Yeah. And here you can also see a bit of the problem. We have so many dependencies, even though on a higher level, we probably just use one framework and a few libraries, but it's all split a lot in the dependency tree. So yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. In OpenQA, we have less of these because things like Bootstrap are just one dependency. Yeah, but it is what it is. Okay, but I guess you can ask questions, or maybe somebody. No, nobody shared some links. Yeah, you can also ask questions about the supply chain attack in general. Maybe I can answer from my memory.
So, anyone with anything else here? If not, that's fine. Marius, could you please go to the workshop topic list? Just mention what we have next. So next will be on the 14th of November to present our results of the recently completed Saga OpenKA for SUSE customers in more detail. So that's it. Thank you. Goodbye.